Have you ever witnessed a moment where courage turned the tide of injustice? Judge ordered black female general to remove her Medal of Honor. What happened next ended her career. Remove that thing from your chest immediately. This is a courtroom, not a military parade. Judge Thompson's voice echoed through the room with the kind of authority he had wielded for 27 years, sharp and absolute. All eyes turned to the 42-year-old woman standing before the bench. General Patricia Washington, the first black woman to achieve 3 stars in the U.S. Army, stood with her shoulders straight and her gaze steady, her Medal of Honor shining discreetly on the chest of her immaculate uniform. She was not there as a defendant, nor was she a witness. Patricia had appeared voluntarily to support the family of a soldier killed in combat under her command whose benefits were being contested by a cruel bureaucratic technicality. A young man only 19 years old who saved 8 lives before losing his own in Kandahar. Your Honor, Patricia replied with the calm of someone who had survived 3 tours in Afghanistan, this medal is not an ornament. It was awarded in memory of those who did not return home. I wear it for them. Judge Thompson, a 61-year-old man who had never served a day in the armed forces, snorted with contempt. I don't care what it represents. My court, my rules. If you don't remove it, you'll be escorted from here for contempt. A murmur rippled through the crowded gallery of veterans. Can one act of defiance change everything you think about justice? Patricia had sensed that something like this might happen. The whispered comments as she entered, the looks of disdain, the way the judge had pronounced her name during roll call, as if the words left a bitter taste in his mouth. She took a deep breath, her fingers lightly touching the medal. 23 years of military service, 5 decorations for valor, commander of 3,000 soldiers, and here she was being treated like a disobedient child by a man who had probably never faced anything more dangerous than morning traffic. With all due respect, Patricia said, her voice taking on a tone that made some veterans in the audience instinctively straighten up, that medal represents sacrifices you may not fully understand. Thompson's eyes narrowed. Something about this woman's demeanor irritated him deeply. A dignity he couldn't break. An authority that rivaled his own. From the back of the room, a gray-haired veteran slowly rose to his feet. Then another. Within seconds, 15 people were standing in silent solidarity. Their eyes fixed on the judge who had just insulted not only a general, but everything she represented. Patricia smiled almost imperceptibly. They didn't know it, but that moment of public disrespect was being recorded discreetly by 3 different cameras. What that arrogant judge didn't realize was that she had spent the last 6 months carefully documenting every case of racial bias in his court. If this story of prejudice and courage touched your heart, don't forget to subscribe to the Black Voices channel to find out how a simple act of discrimination would turn into the most spectacular fall from grace the American courts have ever witnessed. Thompson banged his gavel with excessive force, the sound echoing like a gunshot through the silent room. Security officer, escort this person until she learns to respect the authority of this court. The security guard, an Iraq veteran named Rodriguez, hesitated visibly. His eyes met Patricia's for a second before he lowered his head. Your Honor, I would rather not. I don't care about your preferences. Thompson exploded, his red face contrasting with a black robe. Do your job or find another job. Patricia remained motionless, watching every movement, every word being discreetly recorded by the small recording device she had hidden in the collar of her uniform. 6 months of meticulous preparation for this exact moment. General, whispered the soldier's widow at her side, tears streaming down her face, please, just take off the medal. I can't lose you, too. Patricia placed her hand on the young woman's shoulder, feeling the familiar weight of responsibility she had carried since she was 18 when she enlisted to escape poverty in Detroit. 3 tours in Afghanistan, 23 decorations, base commander at 35. And here she was being treated like a criminal for wearing a medal that had cost the blood of men and women better than her. Mrs. Roberts, Patricia murmured gently, there are moments in life when to retreat is to disrespect all those who came before us. Thompson watched the scene with growing irritation. There was something about this woman that bothered him deeply. Not just the color of her skin, but the way she carried herself, as if she were his equal. 27 years as a federal judge, and he knew when someone was in their place. This general clearly didn't know hers. Across the room, corporate lawyer Jennifer Walsh whispered urgently into her phone. Yes, sir. She refuses to remove the medal. No, she doesn't seem intimidated. Maybe we should reconsider. But on the other end of the line, the answer was clear. Proceed with the public humiliation as planned. Thompson smiled maliciously. 27 years on the bench had taught him that breaking the spirit of problematic people was an art form. He had developed subtle methods for putting black men, women, and especially black women in their place without appearing obviously prejudiced. Last chance, Thompson growled, leaning over the bench. Take off that medal or you'll be arrested for contempt of court. And don't give me any stories about military heroism. I know the kind of people you really are. An icy silence filled the room. Even the corporate lawyers stopped whispering to each other. Some veterans in the gallery clenched their fists, their faces tense with contained anger. In the second row, a freelance journalist named David Chun began recording discreetly with his cell phone. Something about the situation told him he was witnessing a historic moment. He didn't yet know whether it would be a tragedy or a triumph. Patricia smiled, a calm, almost maternal smile that sent an unexpected chill down Thompson's spine. She had faced angry four-star generals, survived Taliban ambushes, and commanded operations that saved hundreds of lives. A small-town judge with a superiority complex was just another obstacle to be navigated with intelligence. Your Honor is right about one thing, Patricia said, her voice carrying decades of military authority. You really do know my type. We're the kind who don't bow down to those who abuse power to compensate for their own insecurities. The gavel flew across the room as Thompson threw it down in anger. Jail. Jail for contempt. It was in that moment of uncontrolled rage that Patricia realized the judge had just fallen into her perfectly planned trap. Every word recorded, every gesture documented, every pathetic display of authoritarianism being broadcast live to 3 civil rights organizations waiting for their cue. What that arrogant man didn't realize was that his racist outburst had just been captured in high definition, and that in the next few minutes, his 27-year career would begin to crumble before millions of viewers who would never forget the name Patricia Washington. Rodriguez hesitated for another 3 seconds before slowly approaching Patricia, his hands shaking visibly. General, I am sorry. Orders are orders. I understand perfectly, soldier, Patricia replied gently, holding out her wrists. You're just doing your duty. Thompson watched the scene with growing satisfaction. Finally seeing that arrogant woman being put in her place. Finally, someone who understands hierarchy, he muttered to his aide. What he didn't know was that for the past 6 months, Patricia had meticulously documented every case that had come through that court. 23 cases involving black veterans, all tried more harshly than identical cases with white defendants, every disproportionate sentence, every whispered prejudiced comment, every look of disdain, all recorded, catalogued, and discreetly sent to retired Colonel James Mitchell, her former mentor and now a civil rights lawyer. As the handcuffs clicked around her wrists, Patricia smiled inwardly, remembering the conversation she had had with Mitchell the week before. Patty, he had said, using the nickname he had given her in military school, if this judge is who you suspect he is, a public confrontation will be our Christmas present. Men like him always hang themselves when they feel they have absolute control. Thompson rose dramatically, savoring every second of his victory. Let this be an example to anyone who thinks of challenging the authority of this court. No matter how many medals you have on your chest here, I'm in charge. The crowd in the gallery remained standing in silent solidarity, but Patricia noticed something Thompson didn't. 3 people discreetly recording with cell phones, including journalist Chun in the second row. More importantly, she saw the Roberts widow whispering urgently on her phone, probably contacting the support network Patricia had organized weeks earlier. You may be seated now, Thompson ordered the gallery arrogantly. The show is over. But as she was escorted out the side door, Patricia made eye contact with an elegant gray-haired woman sitting at the back of the room. Dr. Rebecca Chun, one of the most respected retired federal judges in the country and coincidentally, the mother of the journalist who was recording everything. Dr. Chun had come at Patricia's request ostensibly to observe the judicial system in action. In reality, she was there as a witness of unquestionable credibility for what she knew was about to unfold. Rodriguez opened the door to the holding cell with visible reluctance. "General, can I get you anything?" "Water." "A lawyer." "Thank you, Rodriguez. Actually, my lawyer is already on his way." Patricia discreetly checked the small transmitter hidden in her military badge. The green light indicated that everything was being transmitted perfectly to Mitchell's office, where a team of 3 civil rights lawyers waited with a habeas corpus petition already drafted. Meanwhile, in the main courtroom, Thompson celebrated her victory with the corporation's lawyers. "Did you see how I put that general in her place? 27 years of experience have taught me that authority must be respected, especially by people like her." Jennifer Walsh, the corporate lawyer, looked uncomfortable. "Judge Thompson, perhaps we should reconsider our approach. General Washington has a reputation." "Reputation?" Thompson laughed loudly. "What reputation?" "As a woman who doesn't know her place in society. Please, by the end of the day, she'll be out of here with her tail between her legs and this case will be closed forever." What Thompson didn't know was that across town at the Mitchell & Associates office, 12 monitors simultaneously displayed the live broadcast of everything that had happened in that courtroom. 3 national civil rights organizations, 5 media outlets, and 2 congressmen had already been alerted. In her cell, Patricia closed her eyes for a moment, remembering her conversation with the Roberts widow 3 weeks earlier. "General, I don't know what to do. They're denying my husband's benefits on some ridiculous technicality. They say his death wasn't service-related because it happened 2 days after he was discharged from a hospital." Patricia had investigated discreetly and discovered a disturbing pattern. 28 families of black soldiers have been denied benefits on technicalities in the last 3 years. All passing through Thompson's court. White families with identical cases. Automatic approval. Patricia's revenge would not be explosive. It would be surgical, methodical, and utterly devastating. She had spent months building a network of strategic contacts, influential veterans, specialized lawyers, investigative journalists, and even 2 members of Congress who had long sought evidence of racial discrimination in the military justice system. 30 minutes later, when Rodriguez returned to report that her lawyer has arrived, Patricia smiled. It wasn't just Mitchell who was there. It was a full team, including 2 investigative reporters, a federal prosecutor who had been searching for months for evidence of racial bias in the local court system, and Dr. Rebecca Chin herself, who had decided to formalize her presence as an official court observer. Thompson, still drunk on his supposed victory, had made the fatal mistake of completely underestimating a woman who had commanded 3,000 soldiers in a war zone, a woman who knew exactly how to plan, execute, and win battles against enemies far more powerful than a small-town judge with delusions of grandeur. What that arrogant man was about to discover was that he had just fired the last shot in his own career, and that the woman he had underestimated had spent months meticulously preparing his complete and irreversible downfall. When the courtroom doors opened and Mitchell entered, followed by her team, Patricia saw the look of panic flash across Thompson's face. He finally began to understand that he had seriously underestimated his opponent. But he still had no idea that his public humiliation was only just beginning. Mitchell entered the courtroom followed by a procession that made Thompson swallow hard. 2 federal prosecutors, 3 investigative reporters, Dr. Rebecca Chin carrying an official federal court briefcase, and a man in a suit whom Thompson recognized as Congressman Williams, chairman of the Civil Rights Committee. What kind of circus is this? Thompson tried to keep his voice authoritative, but his forehead was already glistening with sweat. This is a closed hearing. Actually, Your Honor, Mitchell replied with a smile that didn't reach his eyes, it just became a federal investigation. He motioned to an elegant woman carrying recording equipment. This is Amanda Foster of the Federal Justice Commission. We have some questions about your legal practices. Thompson felt the blood drain from his face as he realized that everyone in the room was recording. Cell phones, professional cameras, official equipment. His humiliation was being documented from every possible angle. Release General Washington immediately, ordered District Attorney Davis, flashing his badge, and prepare to answer for 28 cases of systematic denial of benefits to black military families over the past 3 years. Thompson's jaw dropped. How did they know the exact numbers? His desperate eyes searched for Jennifer Walsh, but the corporate lawyer was already whispering urgently on the phone, probably informing her superiors that the operation had been completely exposed. Rodriguez rushed to release Patricia from her handcuffs, his hands shaking with relief. "General, I'm so sorry. I didn't know what to do." "You did exactly what you were supposed to do, soldier," Patricia replied gently, adjusting her uniform with her dignity intact. Her Medal of Honor still gleamed on her chest, immaculate and proud. "This is a mistake." Thompson exploded, but his voice came out shrill and desperate. "That woman disrespected my authority. She refused to follow direct orders." Foster approached the bench, activating a professional tape recorder. "Judge Thompson, you are under investigation for systematic violation of federal civil rights. Anything you say can and will be used against you." The room fell silent. Thompson looked around desperately, searching for friendly faces, but found only looks of contempt, disappointment, and worse, pity. Mitchell opened his briefcase and took out a tablet. General Washington spent 6 months meticulously documenting every prejudiced word, every disproportionate sentence, every discriminatory comment uttered in this courtroom. 23 hours of recordings, 87 pages of documentation, witnesses from 17 different cases. Thompson tried to stand up, but his legs gave way. That's entrapment. She set me up. Entrapment." Patricia finally spoke, her voice echoing through the room with military authority. "Your Honor, I simply documented your own words and actions. The only trap here was the one you built yourself with your arrogance and prejudice." Foster activated a portable loudspeaker. "Let's hear some excerpts from the recordings that General Washington voluntarily provided to federal authorities." Thompson's unmistakable voice filled the room. "I know the kind of people you really are. This woman who doesn't know her place in society. People like her, no matter how many medals you have on your chest." With each word played back, Thompson shrunk further into his chair. Some veterans in the gallery shook their heads in disgust. Others murmured words of support to Patricia. Congressman Williams approached the microphone. "On behalf of the Civil Rights Commission, I am informing you that a full federal investigation will be launched into the discriminatory practices of this court. In addition, all cases tried by Judge Thompson over the past 5 years will be reviewed." Thompson tried one last desperate ploy. "I have a 27-year career. You can't destroy everything because of a misunderstanding." Patricia walked slowly to the bench, stopping directly in front of the man who had tried to humiliate her. "Your Honor, I have spent 23 years defending this country and the values it represents. You have spent 27 years betraying those same values. The difference is that I have never forgotten that serving the people is a privilege, not a right to humiliate the most vulnerable." Foster shut down his equipment. "Judge Thompson, you are suspended from your duties effective immediately. A federal judge will take over this court during the investigation." As Thompson was escorted out of his own courtroom, his legs wobbly and his face red with humiliation, Patricia remained serene. 28 military families would finally get justice, and a corrupt system had lost one of its worst representatives. But as camera flashes captured the judge's spectacular fall, one question remained. How many other Thompsons were there in the system? And how had a simple general managed to bring down an empire of prejudice with nothing but patience, intelligence, and a hidden camera? 6 months later, Patricia walked the halls of the Pentagon as the newest Deputy Secretary of Veterans Affairs. Her nomination unanimously approved by the Senate after the national scandal she had exposed. Her Medal of Honor shone proudly on her chest, now a symbol not only of military heroism, but of civil courage. Thompson, on the other hand, faced a very different reality. Fired in national disgrace, sued for civil rights violations, and with his law license permanently revoked, he worked as a night security guard at a suburban mall. His home had been foreclosed on to pay the settlements to the 28 families he had systematically wronged. "General Washington," said Rodriguez, now promoted to Chief of Security for the new federal court, "you saved not only those families, but all of us who witnessed your dignity that day. The investigation triggered by Patricia's recordings had resulted in a complete overhaul of the local court system. 17 judges were removed, 143 cases were reviewed, and a new national monitoring protocol was implemented to prevent racial discrimination in the courts. The Roberts widow embraced Patricia tearfully during the national awards ceremony. "My husband can finally rest in peace. His benefits have been approved and our daughter will be able to study medicine as she always dreamed." Mitchell, now chief counsel for the new National Veterans Rights Commission, smiled proudly beside his former protege. "Patty, you turned a moment of personal humiliation into a national revolution. That's real leadership." Congressman Williams announced in his official speech, "General Washington's courage reminded us that true strength does not lie in silencing injustice, but in documenting it, exposing it, and turning it into permanent change." Thompson watched the ceremony on the broken television in his one-bedroom apartment, his eyes red with anger and belated regret. The woman he had tried to humiliate was now receiving the Presidential Medal of Freedom, while he could barely pay his basic bills. Dr. Rebecca Chun, the retired judge who had witnessed it all, now headed the new National Judicial Monitoring Institute, created specifically to prevent cases like Thompson's. "Patricia taught us that documenting injustice is the first step toward eradicating it," she said during the inauguration. David Chun, the journalist who recorded everything, won the Pulitzer Prize for his investigative series on systemic racism in the American judiciary, crediting Patricia as the source who made it all possible. His career took off and he now worked as a national correspondent for a major television network. Jennifer Walsh, the former corporate lawyer, left the firm and opened a law office specializing in defending military families against discrimination using the tactics she had learned from watching Patricia. "She showed me that it doesn't matter which side you choose at the beginning. What matters is which side you switch to when the truth comes out." Patricia had learned something fundamental during those months of secret preparation. The best revenge is not to destroy those who hurt us personally, but to use our pain as fuel to create change that protects thousands of others from suffering the same injustice. During her inauguration speech, she looked directly into the cameras. "There are people who use power to humiliate the vulnerable. There are others who turn their own vulnerability into power to protect those who come after them. The choice has always been ours." The 28 military families who had been wronged by Thompson now had not only their benefits approved, but also substantial compensation. Their children were attending prestigious universities. Their homes were paid off, and their stories of resilience inspired entire communities. Rodriguez, now married, and the father of twins, named his daughter Patricia after the general who taught him that following unjust orders is a choice, not an obligation. "I want her to grow up knowing that dignity is something no one can take away from you, only you can give it away." Thompson, at 62, worked alone during the early hours of the morning. His only companions, the echo of his own footsteps, and the constant reminder of how a 27-year career had collapsed in 45 minutes of arrogance captured on video. His ex-wife had divorced him 6 months after the scandal, taking half of his remaining assets. His former colleagues avoided him on the street, and even the golf club had cancelled his lifetime membership. Thompson's fall had not been just professional. It had been social, financial, and personal. Foster, the federal investigator, now led a national task force dedicated to identifying systemic discrimination in the courts. The Thompson case set a precedent. We now know that simple technology and individual courage can bring down decades of institutionalized injustice. Patricia's story became a case study in military and law schools. Students learned about the importance of documenting injustice and how one determined person can catalyze systemic change when acting with strategic intelligence. During a lecture at Harvard University, Patricia was asked about her moment of greatest satisfaction. "It wasn't seeing Thompson fired," she replied with a serene smile. "It was receiving a letter from a young black female veteran saying that she now felt safe to report discrimination because she knew someone would listen to her." The lesson was crystal clear. When we face injustice, we have two choices. We can resign ourselves and accept the role of victim, or we can use our intelligence, patience, and dignity to transform our pain into a force that protects thousands of others. Patricia had chosen the second option, and the result was not just her personal revenge, but a systemic revolution that forever changed the way veterans are treated by the American justice system. 5 years later, when Thompson saw Patricia on the cover of Time magazine as Person of the Year, he finally understood the extent of his mistake. He had tried to humiliate a woman for wearing a medal that represented sacrifice and courage without realizing that he was creating an even more powerful symbol of justice and determination. In an exclusive interview, Patricia reflected on her journey. Thompson thought he was putting me in my place. In fact, he helped me find my true purpose. Sometimes our greatest enemies are our best teachers. They show us exactly the kind of person we never want to become. The corporation that hired Jennifer Walsh to deny military benefits faced a $200 million class action lawsuit, resulting in bankruptcy. Its executives, including those who had guided the discriminatory strategy, lost everything and were never able to find employment in the legal field again. If this story of dignity, strategy, and justice touched your heart, subscribe to the Black Voices channel to discover more real stories of people who turned their worst defeats into the most inspiring victories. Because sometimes the best revenge is simply living well enough to see your oppressors face the consequences of their own choices while you build a legacy that will change the world.